Welcome back to Sex and Society. This is Valerie Baber. I am here for a second week, a second round with the amazing, beautiful Amy Taylor. Amy is a men's magazine model. She has appeared in international issues of FHM, Playboy, Maxim, I think Sports Illustrated, Swimmer Illustrated, all the ones with the hot naked girls. She's been there. She's done that. She's a pilot. She has a master's degree in MBA. And another really interesting thing that she does is she works as a personal companion, or like a professional courtesan. Would you consider yourself a courtesan?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So like a pro girlfriend. You have a small group of men who you professionally keep the company of.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's important for you to be here on this show talking as openly as you do about it, because I think that this is, even though it's California and it's very progressive and liberal, and we're in the US and it's supposed to be a free society, there is still quite a bit of narrow-mindedness and puritanical frames of mind here. I think that this line of work that you do is highly stigmatized. People would assume that women like yourself are working as a companion, or some other form of adult entertainer because you can't do anything else, or because you're a victim. And that's very much not the case with you. So I want to give you a space to speak out and share your wisdom and some of your background, and help people get to know you, and hopefully maybe change their minds about some of the misconceptions that they might have had.
I hope so. Yeah, it's closeting does that. When you can't be as open with who you are, people sort of create your reality for you. Mm-hmm. It's obvious why women like me have typically been relegated to the closet, but the result of that is sort of even more problematic. I don't know that being totally open about it is possible for all, and I'm not here to judge anybody who's unable or unwilling to speak as openly as I am now. For years, I would not have been able to, nor would I have wanted to. And it's even complex to refer to it as work, because the nature of being a date or a girlfriend for somebody, that person doesn't want to feel like work. That person doesn't want to feel like they're a job for you. They want to feel like they're your friend. And so it's complicated to call something that is so personal work, and yet it is work.
Well, you have to take time to get ready. I mean, you're expected to be. You're a professional dream girl.
Yeah.
Really?
Thanks.
Right. So you're expected to sort of look a certain way, walk a certain way, talk a certain way, be available at a certain time in certain places, travel. I see on your Twitter feed that you at least appear to be traveling all the time, and it does take a certain mind frame and an amount of energy to present yourself that way, to be that package, and to be on all the time, to be happy. You can't come into a relationship like that where you're getting paid to show up for somebody with you in a negative mood.
No. So when you've been seeing somebody for years, they do want some degree of reality.
Yeah.
Obviously, they know you. I mean, you can't get on the manifest for the plane without them knowing you. So, they know you. They know your real life, your real background. But on the other hand, no, you can't show up and just say, I'm having a terrible day and I've got a headache and I'm going to sleep the whole time, and then eat Cheetos and watch my own Netflix and ignore you. You cannot do that. And that is what you're being paid not to do. So, right, it's on-demand affection. That is probably what people have most problem with, is that it's on-demand affection, in that the person with the money is sort of calling the shots more.
But don't married people or just boyfriends and girlfriends have to show a little on-demand affection from time to time, or a lot?
I'm sure.
I mean, I know that I have in my relationships. Like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to, because it's a give and take.
Right. If your boyfriend plans a trip to Hawaii for a week, that week you're not going to show up the day before and be like, I'm in a horrible mood and I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because that was planned, and those are fun plans, and maybe he paid for them, or maybe you went Dutch, whatever it is. So, yeah, I mean, there is a certain performative aspect that's why things like self-care and time alone are so important. A lot of companions, we do a lot of self-care, a lot of me time. I think everybody should and probably does. But I need a fair amount of time to myself where I can be more authentic, you know, Netflix and
Bubble baths.
Yeah.
And Uber Eats.
being myself and not catering to anybody. But I would argue many jobs, you know, I was with my personal trainer this morning and yeah, we work out for 45 minutes, but he also sort of sits there and listens to my BS. And he is also selling attention and kindness and the workout. And
A therapist, a counselor is. The guys at Trader Joe's definitely are.
If
They
they
don't
weren't
want
as
to
nice
have
to
those
you-
conversations with me. I know that.
while you're telling you how great your grocery choices were. Yeah, I mean,
How's your day today? I'm like, just put the groceries in the bag, man. I know. Let's just both get out of here.
maybe they enjoy being nice to you and they know
I don't
that
I'm pretty
earns
sure that they were told to. But I hear you. I hear you.
it can
Maybe they
feel
do.
good
Maybe
to
they
be
do.
nice to somebody
It does.
and you can get paid pretty big bucks
Yeah.
to do it. And I think that's maybe a statement on how lonely people are and how much people need kindness that they're willing to pay for it.
So I'm glad that you mentioned this, that people are lonely and people need kindness. So I think that a lot of people would say, oh, a companion, okay, so she makes a lot of money because the guy walks in the door and drops his pants and then she's working like a sex robot. But that's not really the case. I mean, maybe you do that. Maybe you hit it off really well with somebody that you go out on a date with, or maybe not. Maybe there is attention and love that goes into your sessions, your meetings, your dates. I'm not sure how you
All
refer to
manner
them.
of things can happen. I have girlfriends who've retired to marry former clients. And I know people that you knew 5 minutes after meeting them that you would probably never hang out again. It's dating. Whether or not it's compensated, still, it's just like dating. And there's chemistry or lack thereof. There can be love or lack thereof. People meet how they meet. Last week we were talking about my parents met. My dad was teaching my mom.
Yeah.
It's super weird. Maybe a little weird. Maybe a little unconventional.
Little teacher-student affair happening there.
It was
That allegedly didn't happen during class, only when she was out of his class.
maybe not, but
Maybe
it is
not.
the reason that I exist. And so judgment would be ill-assigned.
They're still together?
Oh yeah.
So it
Been
worked
married
out.
for 50 years and
That's
totally
beautiful.
in love. Yeah, it's it's one way. People meet how they meet. And so one of the things that really gets my blood boiling is when people hate something that is one of the few nice things we have.
Yeah.
I mean, when things are consensual and when no one is being abused, can you just let people be happy? Is it your hatred of a guy who's so wealthy that he can pay for access to women he wouldn't otherwise meet, or your desire for a woman who's young and beautiful, and maybe also your envy of her, is no reason to view sex workers, companions as throwaway people and to make jokes about when they're murdered. It's not funny. And these are human beings. The CDC estimates that there's 1 million women engaged in sex work in America at any given time.
Which is 1 in 150. I think I saw this.
Something
we
like
were
this.
speaking about this on the like a sex positive podcast.
That's a lot of women, and there's a lot of men doing this too, by the way, but we seem to be obsessively focused on women.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think it's always bad, and I'm not saying that it never is. Like any other interaction between human beings can be good and bad, but it really bugs me when it's reduced to whether or not it's sexual. It really bugs me when people reduce it to something terrible. I think it's
different than what they're doing, and
Right.
people don't like what's different. People don't like what they don't understand. They fear their lack of they fear what they don't know.
Is it that
It's
different
just-
though? Every woman, all my friends who are like moms and wives now, we went to spring break in Cabo and they like did stuff, and I mean they were different 20 years ago.
Right.
I mean,
It's different than what they're doing right now.
yeah, but have they forgotten? I mean,
That they hook up with
were they
people
really
and
never-
that maybe they're sleeping with their husbands and their husbands are paying the mortgage, and that's the same thing.
is it? I mean, right? Like your podcast with the sugar daddy website owner
Right.
talked about, if you're gonna start outlawing marriage. I mean, that's okay. So we we don't want stuff that's outright coercion and abuse. Right. And it's difficult to tell when you're compensating for a behavior. Do you know that the person really wants to do said behavior, or are they just telling you they did because they need the money? Well, that's the definition of a job.
Work, any kind of work. Right. Who wants to go to work?
Right. And so as offensive to some as the term sex work is, because, many people don't want to be thought of as work, especially customers.
Right.
It is a nod to the fact that it needs to be granted legitimacy.
Right.
The forms of it that are less legal or illegal, depends on what state you're in, the criminalization of them is resulting in death, for real.
Wow.
And it makes it easier to hurt those usually young, poor people that are in them, because when they can't go to police because of somebody harming them, when they can't sue for business deals gone bad, you're creating more vulnerability, and you're creating a person who has less agency. And so to enforce societal norms, which make everybody happier, you're doing it at the cost of some lives, usually of people who are young and poor, and will probably not be doing sex work forever, and which will become mothers and wives and husbands and fathers and do other things, and often are already doing other things. That yoga instructor, that girl at Whole Foods, might be a sex worker.
Instructor, I know what she's doing on the side, because I know she's only making $12,000 a year as a yoga instructor. So BS when she tells you that's her only job. No, she's one of the 1 in 150, I betcha.
Often.
Yeah. So there are two things that are sort of coming to mind right now. I'll ask you this, because it's such a misunderstood industry, and a difficult industry to be in, especially if you're out. There's so much stigma that you face. It can be, if people know what you do, it can be hard to rent. It can be hard to get a job in the real world if you want one. It can be hard to find a mate, a partner who will take you seriously. Why would you even bother doing this in the first place? You went to Berkeley. You have an MBA. You're a pilot. You have a very good head on your shoulder. You're very grounded. Shoulders, I guess you have two. They're plural. You're grounded. There's so much you can and have done. So why would you then also choose to do this when you face so much potential burden?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I started when I was in that wonderful age of the late 20s, where you're still don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So I didn't know about some of the bad things that would happen. Would I have still chosen it had I had a crystal ball? I'm not sure, because I also have had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's been an adventure. Maybe I was looking for an adventure. Have the bad things been worth the good? Well, this story's sort of ending slowly, but I'm not sure yet. I'll have to look back when all's said and done.
So there's been but you didn't go into it when you were young, super young and naive. I mean, 20s is young, but late 20s, you're an adult. You were able to think for yourself. You weren't coerced. It seems like you weren't desperate. You were just you were looking for maybe a little spice in your life.
For sure. I had dated one guy, and he wanted to get married, and he was older. I must have been doing what my mother did. And he wanted me to have kids right away. And so I was staring down the barrel at my whole life being figured out, living
Is this all there is to it?
When I was going to live close to my parents and have he was a doctor, and I was going to be his wife and knock out some kids right away. And that was going to be my suburban housewife story.
Which for some people works, but for me, that sounds like a horrible way to go. I would probably have, in fact,
right,
done the same. Yeah,
you
or I can do this
and do other things. Maybe if I had met him 10 years later, it would have been perfect. But I didn't. I met him in my mid-20s, and I was just not ready. I wanted to date other men. I didn't really plan on dating so many other men, but I wanted to go to graduate school. I wanted to live in Los Angeles. I've always wanted to live in LA. The first time I ever came down here, I was like, oh, I need to live in this town for a while. Yeah. I just loved it.
It's beautiful. It's like a geography therapy, just neighborhood therapy. Even a bad day in LA is still a good day. Yes. There's still sunshine and palm trees and beautiful people. It's like, it's okay. Whatever happened, it's all right.
And this town pulls... LA is a patchwork that's always trying to heal itself and sew together, and it draws people that are also... working on broken themselves. Parts, trying to, and creative people, because this is a storytelling town, and I think I belong here, or maybe not forever, but I did, and I really wanted to live here.
And it's expensive, so you've got to do what you got to do.
And older doctor boyfriend ditched me. I had heard of companionship. I had a sorority sister at Berkeley who had done it.
Oh,
Yeah.
well.
She was gorgeous.
It's always the good girls, huh?
She was a Cal cheerleader, and she was stunning, little blonde. And perhaps I saw an idealized version of it because it was the first .com heyday. And so she was going across the bridge and dating tech zillionaires and coming home with $5,000. And I was like, that sounds amazing. I'm doing that for free. Like,
Right.
And she, so I probably saw a very privileged end of the spectrum, admittedly. And so I filed it away of like, God, that seems really cool. And then when I got down here for grad school and no longer had a boyfriend, and broke, a little bit heartbroken, not really interested in falling in love right away, kind of want to sow some wild oats and do my own thing, and have a financial need. Grad school is very expensive. I didn't want to drop out and go get a, $30,000 a year biotech job, which was the only thing I was qualified to do with an undergrad degree from Berkeley in biology. I was going to be a lab tech, and I didn't want to do that.
And you can't survive on $30,000 a year in LA unless you have a daddy who's writing you checks.
Yeah, I didn't.
Or a boyfriend, a rich boyfriend that you're living with. Or,
That maybe would have been what I
whatever your thing is.
should have done.
Or like 6 roommates.
Yeah.
And should have done. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do
Right.
it. There's no way. That makes me miserable. Maybe some people are happy eating ramen noodle soup for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but I did that for a year when I was 19. And I pretty much did that the entire time that I lived with my parents. And it was very painful for me. It was a source of a great deal of like trauma. Yeah.
Being broke,
Yeah.
I found it very scary.
Yeah.
I knew. I don't want to be broke.
So when I had the choice, you can be naked on television or, get naked and we'll give you money, or, do the broke thing, continue to do that. Like, no, I'm taking control now.
And why would you not use the God-given gifts you have?
Well, it's not all from God.
Me neither. A lot of store-bought. But look, I liked older men. I liked dating. I really enjoy traveling and dating with somebody. I'm good at it, and I find it very easy. Why? I have no idea. Just the way I am, I guess. So I was this guy's companion, the doctor that I dated while I was an undergrad. It was the same. I just had one patron. I was doing the same thing. He paid for everything, and I was his girlfriend. So it was a total natural extension of that to come down here. And so I looked for sort of representation like this sorority sister of mine had in the Bay Area. Couldn't really find that, but found the internet, as we all do, surfed around a while, some late nights, and realized that I could do this on my own. It's not rocket science. So shot some pictures and got an email and a cell phone, and the rest was history. And
Right.
some of it's been bad, but a lot of it's been good. I don't know. The famous question is always, would you recommend that your daughter do this? Well, I don't have a daughter. I have a niece. Would I recommend? Given the bad things, probably I wouldn't. However, if she was hell-bent on doing this, I would tell her that I have her back, and I will do everything I can to make sure she's as safe as possible. If she decided this is her calling.
Well, I
And I would
imagine
worry.
there are some women watching this, and maybe some girls who are, considering they're an adult already, and they're thinking about transitioning into a different form, or maybe they aren't, but they think, well, that sounds like a great thing to do. What would you have done differently? I know you didn't have the crystal ball then, but looking back, do you think you would have taken the 6 roommates, or what would you have done differently?
I don't think I could have. It doesn't matter if I should have or if society thinks that's a better... That is not the way I'm wired, I don't think.
You couldn't take the $30,000 a year job.
No, I did for a while before I moved down here. I worked in biotech between Berkeley and then grad school, and I was utterly miserable. I was killing animals all day. You want to talk about a job that gives you trauma.
Right.
It wasn't sex work. It was working in biotech.
Okay.
It was awful.
Yeah.
And it didn't pay.
Yeah.
I was spending more than I was making to try to live in the Bay Area, and everybody was like, oh, you're a scientist. How great is that? Well, it wasn't great. It was really not
I'm a
great.
broke scientist. It's not great.
And it was misery. I was creating pain in animals, and this has to be done. That's what's happening in every lab around the world in drug development. But it was very difficult for me. I hated it. So I made the best choice among limited options. I think like most people do.
Yeah.
Why not marry a rich doctor and just be a pampered suburban housewife?
Maybe.
I don't know. It's just not who I am.
That's too easy. People will say that being a companion is easy work. Oh, that's the easy way out. I don't know. Easy sounds like divorcing a guy that you pretending to like a man or be in love with a man that you're not really in love with, divorcing him 7 years later and taking half of his net worth. And I mean, that sounds pretty easy. Just walk down the aisle and fake it a few times and go home with cha-ching.
People do.
Yeah.
And, no shade. However people are surviving in this world, if you're not doing any harm, do you? I know that independence for me was always a really strong driver. I think independent sex workers, emotional labor workers, they've done studies like they place independence even above safety sometimes. Mm-hmm. That's why like in outright sex work, like penetrative sex work, some girls prefer independent work, even street-based, to brothel work, because it's the drive for independence is so strong, and the anathema towards being managed and owned is so strong that they really would rather be on their own and take their chances, even knowing that could be incredibly dangerous and harmful. Wow. So my personal mast in the wind for independence is fairly strong. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you'd say that's anti-authority. I mean, I stop at stop signs. I fly planes. I know all about authority and rules. Uh-huh.
Do you still do that?
Yes, I teach.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a CFI, CFII, MEI.
I don't know what that means, but it sounds fancy.
Yeah, I teach people how to fly planes.
Cool.
Yeah, it's actually really easy. Don't tell anybody.
Okay.
Just press buttons. Now the automation's getting so good that these planes the avionics are so good now. There's so much information. But flying around LA it's very crowded airspace. So the most difficult part for most students is the radios. Because we're starting to get
so many voices in your head.
Yes.
It's hard to keep them separate, right?
And there's fear because, hundreds of pilots are listening to you, so you want to get it right, and you've only got a second. And yeah, if it's challenging to fly here, if you can fly here, you can fly anywhere.
So do any of the airspace people that you work with know what you do outside of?
Great question. I used to fly a CJ-1 as a Citation Jet 1, a small business jet with an owner. It was his plane. He used it like a car to fly around, real rich guy, and I was his extra pilot. He did know, and we talk about when you've been placed in the box, it's very difficult to get out. I unfortunately had to quit that job because given that he knew what else, he could not stop viewing me as sort of a wanton hussy who was available to anyone, anytime, anywhere, which was, of course, not true. And he could not take me seriously as a pilot. And it was real traumatic. I had to quit because he wouldn't stop sexually harassing me and demanding sex, and then
so he looked down on you. Oh, here's this hussy.
Right.
She's crazy. She's human garbage, and I can't wait to be inside of her.
Yep. Nice. The dirty, nasty sex. Nice. The feeling of superiority.
Got it.
I want to fuck her, but I kind of hate her too.
You're better off not doing that anyway. No, you've got.
I probably should have fucked him and kept the job, but it was so offensive to learn that the only reason I was hired was for that, and that it wasn't a real job offer. It was just one more guy.
Well, yeah, I think that women deal with that in life, regardless of what it is they do to make money. If you're a woman, you'll probably be offered things for the wrong reason. But I guess the flip side is you're offered things, and there are some people out there who never get offered things. So
well, I think it speaks to women using our sexuality, whether it's posing in Playboy or stripping or sex work. If you're going to get sexually harassed anyway, maybe
might as well.
Maybe I should just go ahead and, because at least then it's on my terms. I mean, if I'm going to be a product of this system we've created where my value is my fuckability and my beauty for a while that I still have it, then maybe I'll just use it for all it's worth. And if I can't change the system, I'll just go with it. I don't know. It sort of seems sad. But yeah, but anyway, in teaching flying, nobody does that to me, and I end up having to closet it once again because it's the only way to be treated fairly, which is a shame.
Well, let's talk about your terms. You did mention that people might view you as somebody who's just open, available to any man. There's no discretion. There's no, judgment. And if somebody says, "Hey, I want you," you just go, "Okay." How does that, is that correct?
If he looks like Chris Hemsworth, he can get it. No. Yeah.
So how do you run your business?
Yeah. So no, you're not entitled to sex because you gave me anything. And I've had men spend all kinds of money on me, neither demanding nor ever getting sex. And that's
how do you decide who you see? Do you tell people no? Do you say, "No, you don't have enough abs for me," or like, "No, I only date you. I only date A or B list celebrities. You're a little too low. You're a little too C for me." I mean,
I've been seeing the same person almost exclusively for a few years now, so I'm so out of the loop. I'm meeting new people, but when I met new people, I picked who seemed interesting to me. Of course, you have to screen for safety, as you should in any kind of dating or any kind of solitary work. Solitary work is dangerous. Like, the guy who works at the mobile mini mart all night long and he's quite alone. The jobs that are done alone can be dangerous, and so you have to screen like your life depends on it, because it does. So of course it's knowing, and if somebody's famous, it's pretty easy. You know exactly who you're going to go meet, but that involves background checks. That involves they have to, you know, send things from places where they're traceable, and you know there's it's a lot of tech-based stuff that women in my industry use to ensure, you know, you learn a lot about like computer code to see if people are lying and catfishing, because they try to. And that is an interesting thing, because you're sort of exploiting the stigma to keep yourself safe, which is, in a twisted way, I want less stigma, but on the other hand, the feeling that a man has that he's doing something surreptitious and a little bit wrong means that he doesn't want to misbehave.
Yeah.
And so you sort of have this weird upper hand that is a result of stigma. Right? Because, it's tough. It's a tough one.
Get stuck.
In the countries where prostitution is legal, like in where Sydney, Australia is, Queensland, some of the men are reportedly, they feel a lot more entitled. New York State has made being a dominatrix, dungeon stuff, totally legal. It's sort of quasi-legal in California. I don't think they really go after it, but New York has made it on the books legal. You can have a dungeon and you can whip dudes for a living. Evidently, some of the clients feel that much more entitled. No screening, no safety. Well, because it's a legal business. I'm not doing anything wrong, so I don't have to behave.
I've been in a dungeon once.
Yeah?
I explored that. I wanted to see.
What did you think?
Yeah, it was in New York, and it totally freaked me out. And I like that. I like the idea of it.
Okay.
You know, in theory, it's really sexy and intriguing to me, and then the reality of it for me, it's like I can't. This is the most bizarre. I can't even go there. I'm just going to keep it a nice fantasy.
Did you not? You didn't do anything? None of it?
Yeah, I joined a group of girls. There was one guy, a vet, who wanted to like hang weights from his balls and do this whole role play scene with this group of girls. Like one was a supermodel, and then she had these little nymphette elf housekeepers run around, and they all like to fuck each other. And this was years ago, so I can't remember. It was pretty elaborate, and he was doing some things, and he was a nice guy, but it was just so, I was like, there's darkness. There's a lot of darkness here. There's some stuff.
Didn't feel good to you?
Yeah.
I find it interesting that BDSM is so often coupled with like this kind of, I don't want to say evil, but darkness maybe, like always black and red and always kind of upside down crosses and things. Like, can't you just have BDSM in like, like steakhouses are always dark brown wood? Why can't you have steak in a place that doesn't look like that?
Whites, like a Scandinavian design.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. You can have your steak in a regular looking restaurant, but like, why are dungeons always sort of dark and evil? It's not necessary.
Well, no, it doesn't need to be necessary. It just felt that way for me, and I was like, I don't need to do anything that doesn't feel good for me. And this kind of reminds me of, I had a guest on a previous show. Her name is Lana Shea, and she believes in sex work as a light work. It can be spiritual work, and she's trying to sort of turn it around so that the strip club doesn't seem like a dark place to be. It can teach people how to connect instead. It can teach people how to be more tantric in there.
Wow. Is she having any success with that?
She's working on it.
It's a great effort.
Yeah.
I've heard that
I like the idea of sex work as light work.
Well, look, sex is one form of exchange and one form of energy. It's certainly not going anywhere. It's always been important to society, probably one of the most focused upon things. It needn't make people so uncomfortable. That said, I just spent the weekend with my family. My sister's kids are minors. You don't really want to air all your dirty laundry in front of kids that are too young to understand those complexities. So, and you talk about dichotomies, sometimes making it a little more forbidden and wrong and titillating makes it more exciting for people. So they sort of do it on purpose. If it's naughty, it's more interesting.
Yeah.
If it's out here all the time, every time, maybe it wouldn't be as interesting. Maybe we would find out that it's just another thing like drinking or eating, and it wouldn't even be that interesting. And it's nice that it's interesting, right?
It is.
It's one of the few fun things we get in this life. So maybe that's okay. I would like it to be interesting to people and titillating without all the hate and judgment that results in real serious harm to lives.
What do we have to do to see that happen in our lifetimes? Is there an answer, or do we just keep What do
I
you
just
think?
wish we could see sex workers as actual human beings and realize that maybe the person who was a sex worker in their 20s and 30s is going to be your grandma in her 60s. It's the same person. And it's okay to change.
Yeah.
We're living a long time now. People are different decades later. And that has to become okay. And in the era of all of our dirty laundry being all over the internet now, it's really hard.
Dirty laundry? I don't have any.
It's really hard to hide from stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping the era of transparency is going to become the era of tolerance.
Transparency.
Well, if you're going to know everything about everybody, can we be a little more tolerant? Because there's not going to be anybody left that doesn't have some skeletons.
I wouldn't trust anyone who didn't have some skeletons. I wouldn't trust the perfect person.
Yeah.
They seem really uninteresting to me.
Giant weirdo if they've never been curious about anything strange.
Totally.
Yes, I agree
Totally.
with that. And I just think you got to see the humanity. I don't like this. There's a campaign. What is it? Real men don't pay for sex, don't buy sex.
It sounds, it sounds vaguely familiar. Real men don't.
I think. Some do and have, and that doesn't make them a demon forever. Yeah.
Or
even mistakes
at all,
don't.
at any time.
No, and even if you think something's bad, if I can never convince you that sex work, some people are okay and with their choices and they're not hurt or hurting, even if you remain convinced that it's bad, how about just a little forgiveness? Because I don't really want to live in a world either where people are reduced to the worst thing they've ever done or one mistake. I don't call this a mistake, but if you're going to call it that, I don't want to live in a world where people are reduced to a mistake they've made and that's forever who they are.
Right.
Because I think people are
so much more complex than that. There's so many elements to us. It's not the one thing that we did the one day.
No, not. It shouldn't be, right? And we should be able to be flexible and malleable in life. And I like a diverse world. I think it's a lot more interesting. And I think if more people step into their complicated truth, I think it's brave. And every time somebody does that, the world gets a little bit more beautiful and a little bit more interesting. And we all learn something. And it's really fun to learn that you were wrong. It's really fun to change your mind.
Yeah.
Or learn that you just don't know, right? That's fun, I think.
You're alive.
Maybe.
I would love to just keep asking you questions and find out more about you. Unfortunately, we are limited in time, and we're up. So I'm going to have to thank you at this point for coming in and talking to us and sharing a little bit about your experience and what you've learned. And would you like to tell those out there watching us and listening to us where they can find you? Do you?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, where online do you live?
Thanks. First of all, it was a sheer honor to finally get to meet you in the flesh.
Oh.
And I stand for you hard. I'm a huge fan.
Cool.
So
Thank you. Likewise.
It is an honor. Brilliant one. You can find me. I'm on Instagram at Amy Taylor LA. I'm on Twitter at Amy Taylor 1. I couldn't get the Amy Taylor. So mad.
Yeah.
I have an official website, amytaylor.com. I'm on Facebook and YouTube. I'm pretty much
All
out
of the
there.
places.
Just Google me. You'll find me.
Amy Taylor or Amy Taylor 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Thanks, Amy. Thank you for joining us on Sex and Society. I'm Valerie Baber, and I will see you next week. Bye.